welcome again back to the Patch Tuesday webinar for 2024, first of 12 to go. We are ready and we're going to get started. Okay, so first of all, housekeeping. For those of you who might be new to the series, you are in what is known as the On24 platform. It's got several windows in there for you. The main window right now with the slides, we're going to be switching back and forth between that and a screen share I'm going to jump into as we talk about some of the news links here in just a moment. You have the ability to resize things there. So if you as we switch over to my screen share, that'll be primarily what we focus on for a little while. Go ahead and resize things within your own window. You can actually span your browser across multiple monitors if you got it, so you can have the slides on one and the screen share on the other. That always helps. I try to zoom in on my screen share so that my resolution is a little bit more legible when I do the screen share. So we'll work through that. The other thing that you're going to see in there is a content window in your 24 screen as well in the browser. That's going to have the download of today's presentation, a PDF format of that. Go ahead and grab that. That way you can get access to it right away. I know many of you like to have that to go straight into your change control processes and make sure that you get things moving as quickly as possible. So make sure to remember to grab that real quick beforehand. Don't worry though, if you don't grab that, it will be sent out. We'll send out a post webinar reminder that'll have both the on-demand webinar availability, and you'll be able to grab those slides from there. Or from the Patch Tuesday landing page on the Ivanti.com website. Okay, so that is our housekeeping. Jumping into we're going to go through just a quick overview of what released. We're going to talk about some recent news. We're going to go through, Todd's going to walk us through the bulletins and releases that came out, and then we'll wrap up with talking about between the Patch Tuesdays. So this is Microsoft's obviously focused around their second Tuesday of the month, Patch Tuesday kind of release. And that's what triggers a lot of organizations' monthly maintenance. But there's this continuous stream of everything else that comes out. We refer to that here as the between the Patch Tuesdays. There's a lot of activity that happens in there. We're going to recap several of the updates that had vulnerabilities relating to them. We're going to talk a little bit about Linux and Mac as well. And yes, we will have some time for Q&A all throughout. So just a high level, Microsoft had their release. So if you're not on the 2012 ESU, or if you're one of those few who are on the server 2008 R2 ESU year 4, there's only about 7 what we refer to as updates or bulletins that they released under. So Windows 10 and Windows 11, the server editions that they've got there, and a couple other things that we're going to talk about. .NET, Visual Studio had an update, and SharePoint. Todd will cover some more details there in a little bit. Actually, SQL too this month, I believe. And then Google did have an update. They resolved one CVE in that update. Mozilla did release some updates, but from what we saw, there were no CVEs tied to that. I don't know if they've updated since last night, but last time I checked, they didn't have any CVEs relating this month. Adobe only had one update this month, and it was for one of the publisher 3D, I believe, application there, which not widely, if you have it in your environment, it's going to be on a handful of systems in the creative team. It's not going to be widespread throughout your user environment. So a light release for January's Patch Tuesday. Not a bad thing. Also good news. No public disclosures, no exploited vulnerabilities in the lineup that we're talking about here today. There's a couple of other products we'll talk about that do have some exploits in the wild going on, but those are for more platform and network perimeter type solutions that are not in the category of easily patchable. Those are going to be things that typically require a little bit more hands-on. Like you're not going to go and update your firewalls or routers or things like that with a simple patch. You've got specialized people who go and push updates to that and have to go through a body of tests with a team of people on a conference bridge for several hours. That we're going to talk about some of those things at times, but Sorry, looks like my microphone is occasionally getting muffled. Oh. So starting off with a little bit of that news. 2 recent 0 days that were hitting the news that I just wanted to touch on real quick. The first article that I wanted to bring up was there is an alert that went out around the Barracuda. There's a Chinese threat group that are targeting Barracuda's 0-day flaw that's out there right now. If you are running Barracuda, just make sure that you're taking a look at this and providing whatever guidance internally that you need to get this updated within your environment. So that is there's a link in there, but CVE-2023-29349 is the CVE in this case. The vulnerability is a flaw in their email security gateway appliances. So if you are running that, actively being targeted, make sure to get moving on getting that one resolved. The second that I wanted to touch on today is Apache. Apache's off-biz enterprise planning ERP solution. This had a couple of vulnerabilities. One that was patched last year, CVE-2023-49070, did not fully fix the issues that they were seeing. So SonicWall has been monitoring continued attacks against the Apache off-biz framework. There is an additional CVE now that's been identified. So when Apache went in and resolved this issue, they didn't resolve everything in that depth. They resolved the entry point that they thought was kind of the main threat there. But these threat actors found a way around the first fix and were still able to attack the kind of the root flaw in this situation. So that's CVE 2023-51467. So if you did have that vulnerability, the 2023-49070, and you push the update for that, be aware there is a second vulnerability. It's actively being targeted. I believe one of my 2 articles actually had, yeah, this is the one. So this is the traffic that they were seeing. So targeting this new vulnerability, this is the number of attempts, successful or failed in those cases, but the number of attempts they've seen to exploit that specific vulnerability. And it has been spiking as they approach the end of the year and into this year. So definitely something that's actively being targeted. Make sure that you're getting your Apache off-biz updates in place for that second vulnerability. So there's 2 different articles. Each kind of takes a slightly different approach at discussing that. But the information that's really important here is the CVE, the new CVE is identified there, and the version that you need to patch up to is described in there. So that's there in case any of you are running either the Barracuda or Apache solutions that are making some headlines. The other piece of news that we wanted to touch on is Microsoft has introduced the Windows protected print mode. So I think we all remember Print Nightmare. What a nightmare. That basically since then, there's been kind of this dreaded moment whenever the print spooler gets touched that printing is going to break all over again for many of us. So a number of organizations have put in a special battery of additional testing in their test cycles. Whenever the print spooler is touched, they go deeper on and make sure that all printing is still functional, because several people got bit many times after Print Nightmare was first resolved. But Microsoft is trying to make the overall print experience better. So they have provided a new protocol. It's the Internet Print Protocol. And this is trying to address the security flaws within the driver and IPP security issues that have existed there throughout. So this new Windows protected print mode is supposed to address those flaws with a new way of approaching this. So this article on the blog does describe what this new approach is to that. It talks about the driver problem. It talks about print nightmare and really how the privileges required to do the old approach were a fundamental flaw in all of this. So it's going to go in and talk about what Microsoft is doing, point and print and other things like that. But it gets into the real interesting part. Here is the Windows protected print mode. What's coming next? So it's going to disable the ability to load third-party drivers. By doing this, a large chunk of that print security is eliminated. And it basically gives a much more secure way of managing communication with the printers in your environment. So that's the article, just giving people an idea of the fact that it's out there and there's details to read up on. Yeah.
There were a couple of points that were kind of key in that article, Chris. They were talking about version 4 versions of print drivers, for example, were introduced in 2012, and which actually solved a lot of the admin problems that had been, showing up. And like 90% of printers were still using version 3 drivers in 2021 when print nightmare really first hit. So this has been like a really slow industry to evolve and update the technology. So hopefully this will move along a little faster now. It seems like they're taking into account both security as well as the user experience by introducing the Windows protected print mode. It also is pretty cool in that there's a lot of expandability in management of individual printers and functionality. So pretty exciting stuff. And they have introduced it in the preview channel as we have on the slide here. So it is starting to show up. You can take a look at it and get your hands a little dirty with playing around with it.
And the second article link at the bottom of that one is the Windows 11 Insider Preview build announcement has details about that Windows protected print mode. So you can actually go in and play around with this. Gives you the steps here to configure that to enable that option. So yeah, that is definitely something to look out for, because I think overall securing printing, definitely something that's important within environments. It's still a very kind of risky area in general. But two, getting to this model should actually protect you from a lot of the impacts that have been happening every time the print spooler gets updated. The old way of doing things, they have to go in and fix things, and when they do, they oftentimes break the way some of those printer drivers are working. This method should be a lot more secure, require a lot less changes to that, and also be a bit more resilient whenever they do updates. So definitely something to look at in 2024 and see if you can switch over to this the new way of managing printer interactions on Windows. All right, so that is it for those. It sounds like one of my links in the deck is incorrect. My apologies on that. I had two links that I'm showing here for the Apache update, and I think this is the one that I linked in the PDF, and it might be incorrect. So my apologies on that. We'll get that updated in the final version. But again, it should be fairly easy to find the article. If you search for CVE 2023-51467, you'll find, I think there were 7 or 8 articles that all came out in the last 48 hours around that. So it should be easy to find that one. My apologies on that. All right. As I mentioned, there's no public disclosures, no zero-day exploits in the releases that we're covering today. There was a list of updates that were released last year and had additional revisions in the January patch update. They all happen to be around kind of the same area. So this is the list of CVEs that were additionally revised in the January update. And these CVEs span across from June all the way through November of last year. A number of ODBC driver and a couple of other OLE variations of updates here. Basically, the only thing that Microsoft did here was they revised this to also include the fact that this affects the Visual Studio editions. So if you're running Visual Studio, your the vulnerabilities that you're running into, you could see your scanners pick up these same vulnerabilities from 2023 on Visual Studio now. That's why Microsoft just revised and made a new update available for those, specifically for Visual Studio editions. On the Linux side, there were, so if you recall, a couple of months ago, we started to post some information from one of our partners, TuxCare. TuxCare takes a very interesting approach to the Linux world. This is not like traditional Linux patch management. They have an approach that's called live patching. It gives you the ability to push a Linux kernel update even, and a few other components as well, but they can push that down to a Linux system and put it in place without the need for a reboot. And the method that they're using works on Linux. This same approach is not quite the same when you look into the Windows world. If you've seen similar approaches, like there's a couple of live patching approaches on the Windows side, those are more perimeter or microcode fixes. And the concern that I have with those approaches is in the perimeter type option, like if you look at Trend Micro's microcode patching approach, is it's not effectively running at kind of the kernel level on the system and in memory and making sure that everything is enforced quite the same way as Linux live patching does, just because of how the subsystems work between Windows and Linux. Other approaches like Jetpatch, no, it's Zero Patch, I believe, is the vendor. They actually do code changes. That enters into a gray area of you're basically getting a code change not from Microsoft, but from a third party. So it enters into a gray area of supportability. Anything goes wrong with anything in your environment, and Microsoft or whatever other vendor is in there probably won't be able to help you with it because it's not a supported code change from Microsoft. So those approaches are a little bit different. TuxCare's live patch approach is able to put the updated code directly into active usage in the Linux subsystem, so that the vulnerable version of code is still technically there, but it's not active. And it's also done in a way, because of the open source nature of Linux, where it's fully supportable. So it's definitely one that, from a overall supportability perspective, I've found a lot more comfortable with that. So that's why we, yes, we have Linux capabilities in some of our products. Some of you are using those capabilities. Why are we talking to another vendor who also does things? It's because they do so in kind of a different way. They also have a very, focused approach to managing Linux environments. So they have a lot of good subject matter experts and focus a lot around this. So we've been getting some really good information from their team of experts that we've been able to funnel into our Patch Tuesday updates each month. So that's where, when we talk about this being highlighted by TuxCare, that's that partnership. The first one here, and you'll see that on the Linux side, I've talked about this as well, there's kind of a long tail. From the point where a CVE is identified, it may be months before those things start pushing out to certain platforms within there. Another thing that TuxCare has is a public-facing kind of repository where you can go look up a CVE on the Linux platform and get a lot more detail about that from within the Linux community. They've got a lot of knowledge in that area, and they keep tabs on a lot more of these things and know, more detailed information about which vendors have been assessing it, which ones have not. And in their CVE lookup, you can find a wealth of information there. So it's really nice for those of you who have to be more detailed on the Linux side. The first of these, 2023-4622, this is a vulnerability in AF Unix socket. It's used to communicate between processes on the same machine efficiently. So the defect in this case was fixed in the Linux kernel for years, but was fixed in 6.1.47 and affects distributions running in previous kernel versions. So they're just giving you some background there on the versions of the Linux kernel that are resolved for this and which ones aren't. But that's definitely one that, depending on which Linux flavors you're on, could still be problematic there. It provides the ability to do a local privilege escalation on the kernel's Unix stream send page function. So this is an elevation of privilege vulnerability that an attacker could still exploit in certain distributions, depending on what your kernel version is running. The second one here is 2023-28466. Let's see here. This is the Linux kernel is missing a lock statement. So it's a race condition scenario, but it impacts the kernel's TLS support functionality, which underpins a variety of third-party communications. So that's the danger on this one, is it's in the TLS communication side of things, and that always gets dangerous for attackers to take advantage of. Mitigation is possible by blacklisting the module, but it will impact functionality depending on what versions of TLS are required for the applications you're running. So that's the kernel versions that are affected are identified here, but definitely another one that they've been looking at right now that's concerning on Linux platforms. The last one here that we've got for today, this one is when you see something as disputed, that means that the reporting researcher and the vendor or community are not in agreement whether or not this is officially accepted as a flaw or not yet. Another privilege escalation vulnerability here in CapNet admin, the application could trigger an out-of-bound read, which could then allow the attacker to exploit that system crash and disclose memory contents and basically gain access to privileged information. Affects kernel versions up to 6.6. So anything later than that, you're good. Anything before that, you could be still exposed to this vulnerability. All right. So that's the lineup of Linux vulnerabilities that they outlined for us this month. Servicing stack updates this month looks like only the 2012 and 2012 R2 platform received a servicing stack update. And there was an update on this is an advisory that goes back to a few years. Originally, it came out in August of 2019, I believe. But this was updated this month. The only change that occurred was Microsoft added some additional audit events for Server 2019. There's no need to install or change anything else here. If you've already done the guidance within this advisory before, all you're getting is additional events will start to show up in there now that Microsoft has added them on the Server 2019 platform. So most likely nothing to be worried about on that one. And we always mention this just because it's important to be aware of all the other things in your environment that need updating. For those of you who have development groups internally working on different projects there, these are the different Azure and development tool updates that also were available there. In most of your cases, this is going to require some other team, a developer team or a cloud services team to update those components. So .NET Framework, Visual Studio, and then on the Azure side, the Azure Microsoft Identity Model received updates this month. So for each of those, there's probably things that the development team needs to do to update the components. So like updating their version of .NET and then pushing a new version of their application after .NET has been updated to make sure that all of the components that were changed over are now available in the application live in production. That's an example. So this is something that, depending on your organizations, you'd want to look into and make sure that those teams are aware and are updating their infrastructure. Lifecycle awareness for this month. This, again, less widely talked about at this point, but January is the final Server 2008 R2 ESU update, end of year 4. So January is the last update. So if you dig deep enough, there were the OS update does have some vulnerabilities that did still apply to Server 2008. That's why they're still noting that this is the tail end of year 4. Server 2012, active and going strong. I know a number of you are still running and have subscribed to ESU content. In fact, there was a question about that earlier that I saw for getting ESU support for 2012 up and running in an air-gapped environment. There was some back and forth. I had heard reports from different parts of the globe and different customers and partners of Microsoft getting very resistant on giving out MAK keys in the latter half of last year. They tried to push the Azure Arc agent as the only way to subscribe to that after a certain point. I think it was somewhere around October, November. Several of you came back saying, nope, we found a way, or your partner or rep at Microsoft allowed you to get the MAK option back in place. I believe the Azure Arc option is a challenge for air-gapped environments. We worked directly with one customer, and they definitely struggled to do that. I believe the resolution on that one is they finally got Microsoft to relent and give them the MAK key option back so that they could do the air-gapped configuration. Because in that case, the MAK key just needs to be put properly into the right place in the registry, I believe, on that 2012 server. And then when you push updates to it, it should just work. But I would say if you're trying to do the Azure Arc agent method of that and you're having trouble in an air-gap environment, Microsoft's write-up for that, from what I understand, is difficult. If that's still problematic for you, I would go back to Microsoft and see if you can get the MAK key. But yeah, that's the best I can offer on guidance around that one. Todd, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, but that's the best I think we've heard.
Yeah, exactly. And I responded back to a couple of questions Perfect. Here about that. Yep, exactly.
All right. On the server side, long-term servicing channel support, server 2019 branch 1809, the mainstream support has ended, but it's now into extended support. So again, it's the LTSC. It's got a long tail life cycle on it. So now it's in extended support out to 1/9/2029, which means you get security updates. Like I believe they cut off the feature updates and things
That's
like that.
Correct. At this point. We had some questions on that last month, Chris, and you're exactly right. So mainstream support means that I should say extended support means you're no longer getting any kind of feature enhancements or anything like that, whereas you are getting security and reliability fixes. That's it.
Right.
So, yep.
Perfect. And if you're not already, if you're using one of Ivanti's products and you aren't subscribed to get those content announcements, this is often very nice, especially when we start talking about that between the Patch Tuesdays. You could subscribe to and get notified whenever content is updated for your particular product. We have multiple products, multiple content streams, depending on your use case. So our community has a sub-community specific for each product. So you can either just go out there and see what's released on there, or you can subscribe to that particular community feed and get notifications whenever you do that directly in your email. So if you have not done that, that is always helpful to get visibility around that. All right, Todd, handing over to you for the bulletins and updates.
Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year to all of you. Let's talk through what happened yesterday on the release side. Chris did mention that we did see a update for Chrome to version 120.216 as shown here for the Mac side and Windows side as well. Only one vulnerability around remote code execution. This was not a zero-day announcement or anything like that, so it's kind of interesting that they released just one CVE, but be aware of it and include it in your updates this week if you haven't already. On the Windows 11 side, we did see a jump from last month in the number of vulnerabilities that were addressed. We did have 35 vulnerabilities. As Chris said, none of these were publicly disclosed or known exploited. There were 49 new vulnerabilities overall this month from Microsoft. Most of these actually were a part of some of these Windows 11 updates. A couple of known issues that were carried forward. I talked about this one, I think, for like the last 3 or 4 months now. This encrypt drive reporting error problem. This is actually not a technical issue with things not being configured properly. It's only a reporting issue. So be aware of this one. It's falsely reporting that you are not properly secured. That one's been around for a while. These two issues around Copilot in Windows and the way the icons and the emojis are displayed have also been around for a couple of months since they introduced the new Copilot version in Windows. So kind of be aware of these as well. Not really a big deal, but they are calling them out specifically in the bulletin. So just want you to be aware of them. And they are in both in the second version, latest releases of Windows 11. On the Windows 10 side, a few additional vulnerabilities addressed, 39 this month. Again, none publicly disclosed or known exploited here as well. There was a new issue reported where Copilot is not properly supported in this version of Windows 10. This is the 21H2 version. Kind of be aware that, you know, Copilot was specifically developed for Windows 11 and kind of backported to Windows 10. So they are having a few issues here and there. They did report that some of the features specifically in Copilot are not supported under Windows 10. And also this is one that just popped up. Turns out that when you're displaying, wherever you're displaying your toolbar or your taskbar rather, Copilot will not show up properly. So you want to make sure that your taskbar is properly displayed and Copilot will pop up properly as well there. This version of Windows 10 also has that encrypt drive reporting error and the icon display as well. So some minor issues there, but be aware of them should you get any reports from your users. Those were the only 2 critical updates this month. The rest of them were all important. We did see an update this month for SharePoint Server, only one vulnerability addressed. It was this 21318. Again, not publicly disclosed or known exploited. Just be aware of this one. This has to do with the possibility of remote code execution on a SharePoint server if they have site owner privileges. We did see updates for the click-to-run apps this month. We did not see updates for the 2013 or 2016 installable versions that are not click-to-run. But we did see one vulnerability addressed here. It was 20677. Just a single remote code execution vulnerability this month, again, rated important, but that update is out there. We did see the .NET framework updates as well this month. There were updates all the way back to version 2 through the latest 4.8.1 in the runtime environments, security feature bypass, as well as a denial of service vulnerability. I included a little bit of the information up above in the description about these security feature bypass issues. One of them has to do with certificate chain building, and the other one has to do with a man-in-the-middle attack. Looking at the last vulnerability under denial of service, there was really no details given on it. It was just kind of a general statement that this vulnerability exists, but there were no details. So be aware of that one as well. Anyway, you do get the monthly roll-ups for .NET this month. This includes all of the .NET updates going all the way back to 2016. And then there's, of course, also the security-only updates, which address just these 3 vulnerabilities. So if you tactically want to apply your updates each month, whenever there is a security-only update for .NET available, this is also released this month as well. So you have the option there between the monthly roll-up or the security-only on these .NET fixes. Talking about between the Patch Tuesdays, keep in mind this is going over the holiday season, so there were kind of limited releases this month, very small number. We had some security updates with CVEs. We had the Open Office issue. We had some additional Chrome updates, Firefox, Thunderbird, and Wireshark had some releases this month, between Patch Tuesdays rather. We did have security updates without CVEs. Again, these are those applications that the vendors say it's a security update, but there aren't any specific CVEs reported associated with those. And of course, we have a handful of non-security updates as well, where general performance enhancements or things like that. Listing out some of the windows with third-party CVE information in case you're interested, we include them here. We had, like I said, the versions of Chrome that were released, Open Office. You can see that a large Firefox update, 121 came out. This was released on 12/19, addressing 18 vulnerabilities. So you should obviously make sure you're up to date with the latest version of Firefox, but this one came out mid-month. And then we had the Wireshark updates. They actually updated several versions of Wireshark. 3.6, they updated 4.0 and 4.2 as well. So if you're running Wireshark in your environment as part of a discovery tool, analysis tool, make sure that you have that updated. And we had a Thunderbird update as well, addressing 11 vulnerabilities this month. On the Apple side, we had one Apple Sonoma update, the Chrome update, and Firefox. Of course, these carry over. They have both the Windows and the Mac versions. They do them all simultaneously, of course. We didn't have any security updates without CVEs this month, and we had a lot of non-security updates as well. This was the Sonoma update, 14.2.1, fixed one vulnerability. On the third-party side, these are the Chrome updates. Again, same ones that you saw on the Windows side showed up here as well. We had a Firefox update for the same 18 vulnerabilities, the ESR version for 11. And of course, on the Apple side as well, Microsoft does release their version of Edge. If you're running that on your Mac OS devices, there were a couple of updates there as well. Again, single vulnerabilities addressed there. And finally, Thunderbird had 11 vulnerabilities as well this month. This was on back on the 19th, so right before the holidays. Again, kind of a light release of third-party and Microsoft updates in between the holidays. Getting back on track, of course, we have our Patch Tuesday releases you need to deal with right now. With that, Chris, I'll turn it back over to you on the Q&A side. Let's see what we got here.
All right. So while Todd was going through that, I did go out and do a little bit more searching because a number of you all posted about KB5034441. The Microsoft forum discussions have been mediocre at best, unfortunately. They've been giving very plain answers and treating it as a edge case kind of thing, but obviously this is hitting a lot more people. I did find this article on Ask Woody. So I'm going to give everybody time to grab that article from here. But if you go and search for that particular KB with that failure on Ask Woody, you're going to find this article from Susan Bradley. So for those of you who are not aware, Susan is, she took over a lot of the activities on Ask Woody as Woody retired. And she's also the moderator of patchmanagement.org. So patchmanagement.org, if you're not familiar with it, it is a community focused specifically on the topic of patch management related challenges. She's very knowledgeable, very well connected in that community and with some experts over on the Microsoft side, and tends to get to really good answers better than anybody I've seen. So if she's got an answer for this, chances are this is going to be the best you're going to find out there. I know a couple of you were asking about this one. This is the article I would take a look at first. Now, what it looks like is happening is basically if your Windows 10 machines are a little bit older and they were set up with non-optimal partition sizes is how she refers to it. But basically, this particular update requires a large enough amount of space to be able to do the WinRE backup, or it's going to fail to run the install. So that's in most cases where people are running into issues. She is talking about doing this from an approach of either blocking it, or if you are in a situation where you need to do this, she gives some details here on how to try to approach this. She doesn't recommend installing the updates at the moment. That's her guidance. If you're not running BitLocker, she's suggesting to hide the update. If you do want to install it, she's going to be apparently doing a video on it with necessary next steps. So I would say take a look at this and watch for her additional updates around that as she finds a way to better manage that. So best answer I've found on that issue right now. So again, see if you can get to that article there. All right. There were, let's see. Oh, somebody was saying they're seeing it on server 2022 as well. So far, I've only seen articles relating to the Windows 10 failure error. So don't have any more details on that, but she might have more details for a server, if not now, possibly in the near future. There were a few people asking about, we did have a vulnerability that was resolved for Endpoint Manager. Let me pull up the article for it here. So EPM, for those of you on EPM, there was a CVE that was reported, not actively being exploited at this time, but it is a 9.6 criticality. The details about that advisory are available on the community, and basically the article on getting your EPM instance up to date. So that is the best source of information there on that update. I know there was a question around, will 2021 be getting that? No, 2021 had its final update prior to this CVE being discovered. So if you are on 2021, you would need to update to 2022 to be able to get this vulnerability resolved. So those are the questions that I've normally seen on that. Let me see if I can get this here. For those who asked me about it, I'm shooting you the KB article for that. I'll take a look and make sure I got to everybody else who asked that question as well. But that's the details about that one. Todd, are you seeing any others that think there's one here from Scott about the Barracuda vulnerability. If you're using Barracuda Email Archiver, I would say go and double check on that. They specifically talked about the email security gateway. I don't know if Archiver would be affected by that. It sounds like no, but I would check with Barracuda to double check on that and make sure. The articles that I read up on, I didn't go directly to Barracuda's page to get deeper into that. They were all talking about that, specifically the email security gateway. So check with them just to be sure, but I think you're probably good. There could be details deeper down that could be affected as well, though. So double check.
Let's see. There was a question in here on the Kerberos vulnerability.
Yeah, I was just looking at that one too. So in a vacuum of not a whole lot to talk about in the Microsoft update, everybody flocked to what's the highest CVE in the lineup of the 49 that they were resolving, and that was it. So there wasn't a whole lot of details that were shared by Microsoft on that. So it looks like Kevin found an article on Security Week that gets into a little bit more detail there. I would say your best sources of information would be to find, if there's a few of those that have security researchers commenting about it, that's going to be the best info you got there. It does look, it's a 9.6 CVSS score, if I remember correctly. So not a insignificant CVSS score. It is not disclosed. It is not being targeted at this time. That doesn't mean, though, that somebody won't go looking at it. It is resolved in the OS update this month, though. So, there's no immediate stop everything you're doing and get the OS update rolled out as quickly as possible event this month. So just get it done in your regular maintenance. For most of you, that means in the next 2 weeks, you're going to get this rolled out. I think that is more than adequate to address that, in my opinion, Kevin. I wouldn't say break glass and try to get it rolled out sooner if your regular maintenance is going to be within the next couple of weeks at most. But yeah, I didn't see too much more directly from Microsoft. So your article on Security Week has probably on par with the most information that's available out there right now on that one. Yeah, so there was a question about the EPM update. It's a SQL injection vulnerability. It can allow the attacker to take control over machines running the EPM agent. Let's see here. Did they clarify? Yeah. If you update the core server, that should take the teeth out of this one, because the attacker is going to be trying to query the SQL server to take advantage of this vulnerability. So that's the important part, is getting the core server updated. Okay.
Yeah, Mike was asking about the EPM CVE. Yes, it is only EPM. It's not UWM.
Correct. Yes. And again, vulnerability was reported via private disclosure between the researcher and Ivanti. No details of this have been publicly disclosed, and there's no active exploits against it at this time. So I think we've got most of the others are just repeats of what we've talked about already, with that Microsoft KB for failing to install. Looks like somebody else was reporting the issue for both 2016 and 2022 servers as well. Everything I've seen so far, Colin, was the Windows 10 side. So not saying it couldn't happen on those, because you're obviously seeing it as well. And we've had at least one other person say 2022 on today's call. So looks like it is a bit more widespread. I would say take a look at Susan's article on Ask Woody. It probably, again, let's see, here it is, gives the best overall information as to the root cause of why this is happening. I would expect it's happening for the same reason on the server side as it is on the workstation side. So there's the Ask Woody article there. I just shot that over as the response to that.
Yeah, there were some additional questions around the Windows protected print mode as well that we might not have answered directly. One was around, like, for example, a network printer. I would go in and read through that article that we listed in quite a bit of detail. They talk about a lot of different scenarios and how, for example, in some situation, they will download drivers for a particular printer and load them into a container to protect the rest of the system, especially for Wi-Fi connected printers and things like that. So there's quite a bit of detail in that article, I think, and quite a few scenarios that are covered. It's going to take, obviously, a while for a lot of these systems to be updated and be compatible with the WPP protection. But it is a really good start from what I've read so far.
Yeah, and Sam was commenting, saying that Microsoft says Windows 2022 patches are handled just like Windows 10 2022 H2. I would say fairly accurate. The way that their content is structured, within each of those branches, the workstation and the server branch are quite a bit of shared code. The server side has certain things off by default and other services on that you won't find on the workstation side. But for the most part, they're sharing the same kernel and core kind of structure. So they are applied very similarly as well. So got a question from Jesse asking if anybody's having an issue with Adobe where it will launch the application but will not show the UI to the user. So don't know if anybody else has been seeing that recently. but if you have, throw a comment in there and we can try to, since September, he's saying. But he hasn't seen a patch or any resolution to it as of yet. Oh, he's got a reg key edit fix, but you can agree that that would be annoying. Yes, absolutely. So if anybody else has details on that one, share it here if you've got that. Nothing I've heard of, Jesse, though, unfortunately, on that. So, all right, I think that may be wrapping us up on the questions that we're able to answer on live here today. Yep. It does sound like a number of you are still struggling with that 503-4439 issue. I would say keep an eye on the Ask Woody article and see if Susan's additional updates here. She was talking about actually providing a video showing steps to resolve the issue so you can get things applied. Keep an eye out for that. That's the best I've seen so far. And I was searching a few different places while Todd was giving you guys the other updates for this month. So that's definitely the best that I've seen. Microsoft steps are very generic right now. They haven't given anything credible beyond that. I would say best steps that you could take: report this to Microsoft, open a case with them, or hit the community up to say you're having the issue as well. More people doing that obviously gets them to take steps to try to correct the issue. But this may just be something that they need to resolve within the next month here. So we might have hit a case where some of you may not be able to do January's update, or you might have to take some painful steps to get around that issue. So push on Microsoft. That seems to be the next step on that one that I would follow. All right. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Again, we've got, just kind of a first kickoff for January of 2024, but we've got a lot to go, obviously. So we'll look forward to seeing you again next month. We did talk about doing a kind of a year in summary kind of 2023. Todd and I have already been pulling together some trends and behaviors and major changes that we've seen in there. Things like Apple switching to the rapid release feature, Google Chrome going to a weekly release, some of the trends that we're seeing in all verticals. I mean, I'm talking to retailers and finance and healthcare companies, and the unanimous kind of trend that we're seeing is organizations not just having monthly maintenance and an exceptions process, but having 2 different release tracks and a designated priority update track. So we're going to talk about trends like that we've been seeing. And you'll actually see I did kind of an early brain dump on what I plan to write up on that on this January blog right up for Patch Tuesday. So if you read that blog post, the second half of it, I go into some details around some of those trends that we're seeing. So we'll try to get something more substantial written up here before the end of January, but definitely something we're working on, and we'd like to provide some more details and insights on some of the trends we're seeing. So look forward to that. And again, thank you for joining and keeping on following us. We'll talk to you all next month.
Have a good month. Take care.
All right. Thank you, everyone. That is a wrap for this month. As always, you should definitely subscribe and make sure that you're getting the latest information from us. We're going to do not just the monthly updates, but we'll also be streaming other things like the top questions asked and other great tidbits of information that you're going to want all throughout. So definitely subscribe to our feed, and we'll see you here again next month.